Good afternoon, everybody, and happy Friday. I want to thank you for tuning in today to our live broadcast. I am currently going live on Facebook, and I'm just hooking up to Instagram really quick. So I'll be looking between both screens. Instagram is not booted up yet, but feel free to leave your questions as I go along, and they'll be answered at the end in order that they were received. Any questions we receive after the broadcast is complete will be answered by our team. Today, I'm going to be discussing custody options as it pertains to third parties, specifically step-parents. So I'm also going to announce our holiday giveaway winners today live. So if you participated in that giveaway, you may be winning $100. I am Attorney Joy Fairell. I'm the managing attorney here at the Fairell Firm. We're located in Metro Atlanta in Tucker, right off 285 Lawrenceville Highway. Here at the Fairell Firm, we have a strong focus on family law litigation that includes divorce, child custody, child support, adoption, visitations, probate, wills and estates, all of that. Also, our other part of our practice is personal injury. So if you've been in an accident and you were not at fault, you can give us a call for that as well. If you want to know more about myself and the Fairell Firm team, you can head over to our website at fairellfirm.com to check us out. And you can also stay connected with us with everything we have going on by following our Facebook page, our Instagram page, and our YouTube page. So before we get started, I want to give you the legal disclaimer I'm required to do. By tuning in today, you're acknowledging that the information I give you is for informational purposes only and is based on the laws of Georgia. Every case is different, and you should seek specific legal advice if you need advice pertaining to your case. By participating in this broadcast, you understand that we are not creating an attorney-client relationship. Again, I take questions at the end of the broadcast, so you can feel free to ask any family law question, even if it doesn't relate to today's topic, and I will answer those questions at the end, so type them at any time. Okay, so before we get into it, I want to go ahead and announce our holiday winners, and I'm going to put some snow on the screen, even though it's not snowing in Atlanta anymore. Woo. Okay, and we've been running our Christmas campaign, and so 2 lucky followers today are going to win $100 Visa gift cards. Hopefully that'll help them finish up their Christmas shopping or buy something nice for themselves. I'm going to have my daughter and one of my employee starters come and draw the names for you guys. So here they come. We just have to wait 1 second for them. All right. So here comes Parker. Parker, say hi.
Hi.
Okay. Hi. Okay. Pull out one name. Okay, so our first winner is from Instagram, Brown Sugar Diva 1. That's your name. You just won $100. If you know her, let her know. We're going to tag her at the end of this. Okay, let's get Michaela, I'm sorry, to come up. And say hi, Michaela.
Hi.
Okay, so he's going to pull our second winner. And this is going to be Adriana Cooper Works. Looks like this was a Facebook entry. So those are our 2 winners, Adriana and Brown Sugar Diva. So congratulations to you ladies. You just won $100. And thank you, girls. We'll be doing some more giveaways in the future. So if you want to be a part of that, just make sure you follow the rules and you too can win some money. Okay, so I'm going to take off my little Christmas stuff since we've done that. Okay, so let's get going. Today's broadcast is going to be about custody options for step-parents. In the United States, nearly 40% of all marriages have a blended family, meaning that one spouse brought children into the marriage. The question is often raised, what rights do step-parents have when it comes to their stepchildren, not only in their daily lives, but if the marriage ends in divorce? The law is very clear on this topic. Absent a step-parent adoption during the marriage, the step-parent would not have any rights whatsoever in a divorce, this becomes a very difficult reality for a lot of step parents who truly love their stepchildren as their own and have raised the child as their own and may be the only father figure or mother figure that that child knows. But the law is clear. If there's no adoption, you do not have any rights to that child if the marriage ends. So let's talk about whether or not you should adopt your stepchild if you are currently married. Going through a step-parent adoption is the only legal way to have rights to a stepchild. This is a decision that should be very carefully considered. Once an adoption is final, that is it. It cannot be reversed. Even if the parties get divorced and one gets remarried, it is permanent. Choosing to adopt your stepchild is an excellent option if you have been just like the biological parent in that child's life, especially if you've been there since early on, or if your spouse has some type of illness that's going to end in death and the child's other biological parent is not active. A step-parent adoption could be very beneficial because if the biological parent passes away, you want to make sure you have the opportunity to continue to raise your spouse's child. What is important to note here is that once the step-parent adoption is done, the adopting parent is on the hook for the care of the minor child and could be subject to child support obligations in the event of a divorce, just as if the child were their natural born child. So if you are thinking about a step-parent adoption and whether or not it's a good option for your family, here are some things that you need to know regarding step-parent adoption. The first thing that would seem obvious, but sometimes it's not, is that first of all, you must be married to the child's parent. So it doesn't matter how many years you've been dating or living together. If you're not legally married, you're not going to have standing to do a step-parent adoption. You have to be legally married to the child's biological parent. And then once that is satisfied, if you're going to pursue the step-parent adoption, if the stepchild has a biological parent that is living, for example, let's say the biological father is not active in that child's life, that father would first have to surrender his parental rights so that you could come in and do the adoption. This is why it is mandatory that biological parents receive legal notice of any pending adoption. So when you file the adoption, you do have to serve. Serve means give notice and papers to the biological parent. The surrender of the parental rights of the other parent needs to be voluntary, and it has to be in writing in compliance with a certain affidavit. It has to say very specific things. That's why it's good to have a lawyer if you're doing this to make that termination accurate. Once a parent does sign the voluntary surrender, that parent does have a 10-day grace period in which they can change their mind and withdraw that termination of their rights. However, in some cases, the biological parent has completely disappeared, his whereabouts or her whereabouts or are unknown. And in these type of scenarios, obviously we can't get a voluntary surrender because we don't even know where the parent is. So when we have situations like this, the court does have the authority to surrender a parental right. So if the court is going to surrender somebody's parental rights, meaning they're not doing it voluntarily, or let's say we're in a situation where we know where dad is and he's not been involved in child life, but he gets notice of this adoption. And he's like, oh, no, you're not going to adopt my kid. And you want it to happen. You can ask the court to terminate the parental rights. And if you're going to make that argument, some things that you're going to be looking for, what the court's going to be looking for is whether or not that parent for a period of 1 year or longer, immediately filing the petition for adoption without cause, has failed to communicate with the child or attempt to communicate to the child in a meaningful and supportive way, or has failed to provide any support for the child required by law. And so again, we're looking for immediately the 1 year prior to filing the adoption. So if you're in a scenario where, let's say you have a 10-year-old and your husband has raised that child and now you want to adopt, and for 9 years, the biological father has not been involved, but for this past year, you filed a child support order, he's been paying child support, that would invalidate the termination of his rights because the 1 year prior to, he's been providing support for the child. And the court's not going to consider the 9 years that he didn't. And so this is what you want to be careful, especially if you're a mom and you're gonna be thinking about possibly having a step parent adoption, and then you go and file a child support case and they enter child support. Now we don't have really the opportunity to terminate the rights if he actually pays the child support. So keep that in mind going forward if that's something you want to pursue as far as with the child support. So if the court decides that there hasn't been communication with the child and it needs to be no attempt to communicate, somebody's trying to communicate with the child and you're preventing that or blocking it, that's not going to be a valid argument saying, well, he hasn't talked to the child if you blocked his phone number. So it has to be a legit no intent to communicate with the child, no financial support for the child. And then once those two elements are met, the court will have to be of the opinion that the adoption is in the best interest of the child. The best interest of the child standard is the standard we follow all across the board with child custody cases. A biological father can also do a pre-birth surrender, meaning when the woman is still pregnant with child, he can surrender his parental rights only for the purpose of adoption. So if there's going to be a pending adoption, so say for example, and this is a real life kind of example, if a wife gets pregnant by another man and her husband decides to stay together and work out their marriage, and that other man wants to just terminate his parental rights to let her husband raise his child, he can most certainly do that prior to the birth of the child. So in the event that a step parent desires to adopt, but the whereabouts of the biological father is unknown, what's also required by the court if you're pursuing a step parent adoption is we have to run a search of the punitive fathers registry. The punitive fathers registry is a state level legal option for unmarried men to document through a notary public any female they engage in intercourse with for the purpose of retaining parental rights of that child if in the event they were to conceive. So if you feel like you've gotten somebody pregnant, if you know you've gotten somebody pregnant and she's disappeared or she told you she had an abortion and she looks to be still pregnant and you think something may be up with the child, you should go and register yourself into the punitive fathers registry. That way an adoption cannot take place without you being notified. And I know there was a big case that went viral. This guy, mom tried to give up a baby for adoption completely to another couple. And thankfully the father was registered on this. And so he actually ended up being able to get the child and objection to the adoption. So if there's any concern about a woman giving up a child for adoption that you are not in agreement with, then you need to make sure that you register on the punitive fathers registry. So in addition to the termination of the parental rights, the actual spouse must consent. So if we're married and you want to adopt my child, I have to consent to that before you can do it. You just can't go file it and say, oh, I'm going to adopt your kid for Christmas. I have to be fully aware of that and be in agreement to those terms. If the actual biological parent does not consent to the adoption, it's definitely not going to go forward whatsoever. If we're talking about children that are over the age of 14, children age 14 or older must give their consent to the court. And I'm not talking about just in front of a notary, but they have to come into court and give consent to the court that it is their desire to be adopted. So if you have a 14, 15, 16, 17-year-old who doesn't like the step parent and not going to agree to it, the adoption isn't going to go through, and they're going to actually have to come to court and tell the court, hey, I don't want to be adopted, or yeah, I do want to be adopted. So if they're not in agreement with it at 14, the adoption is not going to go through. Once we have the surrender of the parental rights, the consent of the other biological parent, or the consent of a child over age of 14, we're into the litigation process at this point. And before the court's going to finalize the order, they're going to do what's called a home investigation. During the home investigation, they're going to come in and check the quality of the home, make sure it's fit for a child and suitable. So once the home investigation is complete, they do a report and they submit that to the court for the judge to be able to see it. And the judge is good to go with the report. There's going to be a case set for the parties to come in to finalize the divorce. So once the adoption is final, it cannot be reversed. Therefore, the adopted parent now has the exact same rights as the biological parent. So in the event of a divorce between these parties, the step parent who adopted will have the exact same legal standing to pursue custody and visitation rights. In addition to that, the step parent will be entitled to receive child support on behalf of the child or be subject to paying child support on behalf of the child. And like I say in a lot of the other custody videos, when we're talking about custody, we're talking about legal custody and physical custody. And so in this scenario, you can't make the argument if your husband or wife comes in and wants primary custody. You can't say, well, they're my biological kids. They're not even her kids. They're adopted. It doesn't matter. An adoption puts you on the same legal standing as if you birthed that baby. So they can get primary custody, joint legal custody, and visitation and everything else. So now you can go ahead and start typing some questions. And like I said, I will address any family law question, even if it's not related to the step-parent adoption topic today. So while you guys are typing out your questions, I wanted to share an exciting announcement that we're doing here at the firm. We're launching a podcast in 2018, and it's actually going to be called Law Talk Live, Real Situations and Real Advice. And the theory behind the show is going to be to bring some of your questions that you put on here to actual life. Sometimes you just ask a question that's like this big, but the whole fact pattern is like this big. And so each show is going to be centered around a guest situation, a guest who has submitted their story. So we want to hear all about it, and we want to give you real advice, friend to friend advice, sister girl advice, sister to homeboy advice, plus the mix of the legal advice in it. So give us the whole story. Tell us your story. Tell us what you're going through, what your dilemma is, what your drama is. And in the midst of that, we'll give you our opinions. And more importantly, we're going to give you the law pertaining to those things. So if you want to be featured on one of our shows, on one of our podcasts coming up, you can submit your situation to support@fairellfirm.com. And we will go through selections, and we can keep you anonymous, so that won't be a problem. Just let us know that you want to remain anonymous, and we will contact you before we do the show so that you can be a part of it. Okay, so now let me grab some questions here. Okay, Isaac says, where are we located? We're in Tucker, Isaac. Okay, Stacks V-Neck Shawty Prophet says, I have all my rights, but my kid's mother have gone to another state and I don't know where the address is. What do I do? Okay, so what you need to do is, the best thing to do, you're going to have to file a contempt action here. Obviously, that's the court recourse, but you have to find out where she is first so she can get notice of it. So you may want to do a small investment into some type of private investigator or someone who could do a skip trace to try to locate where she is. And then once you locate her, you can then move forward with the legal proceedings. But don't wait too long to do that. Oscar Delroy, what if me and the mother were never married but were together when the child was born, and for 3 years after, and his biological mom left the child with me, not the biological father? I have no clue where the mother is now or who the biological father is. It's impossible for me to custody at all. Oscar, in this scenario, because the mom is living, they were never married. Oh, okay. So you guys weren't even married. Yeah. No, you're not going to be able to get custody in this scenario because both of the parents are living, and they're both going to have to surrender those parental rights. And you, in this scenario, no biological ties, no blood ties to the child. Blood relatives can come in and adopt the child, but you in this scenario don't have any blood to this child, so you wouldn't have standing to bring the adoption or a guardianship for that matter. Kenyatta, is a child support order issued through a divorce? How are the payments supposed to be paid? And what if the payments are not being paid? If there was a previous order issued to the state, but the new order have to be turned into the new state. And so, okay, so Kenyatta, child support orders through a divorce are typically paid monthly, either once a month, twice a month, or every single week. It's going to depend on what your order said. They're also either going to be paid directly to you or they're going to go through child support services. It's also going to depend on what the order said. If you have moved states since the final order, you can contact the previous state that had the order and tell them where you are, and then they can transfer it to your new state to enforce the order that way. Okay. Alexis, what if a step parent wants to adopt a child when the biological father is absent? What is the route for that? Yes, Alexis. So this is sounds like he's also not a birth certificate. This sounds like a great candidate for a step parent adoption if the biological father is absent. But we have to make sure absent, like absent, no contact with the child, no communication, hasn't provided any financial support. And I don't mean like a child support payment, but it hasn't bought diapers, no clothes, no shoes, or anything for at least a year. So the process with that is, one, we can file it and see if biological father will voluntarily terminate his parental rights. And if he does not, then we have to see if the court will terminate his parental rights, which is a very high burden to meet if he has any argument whatsoever. So it's going to depend on how old the child is, how long he's been absent in the child's life, and what county you're in to kind of determine what the judge will say, which we never really know. But you probably have a good case for a step parent adoption in that scenario. Okay, so I think I have hit all my questions. If you have any more questions, go ahead and type them. I'll wait a second. If you feel like you need specific legal advice, we do offer consultations here in the office. You can give us a call at 678-973-2803 to schedule a consultation. And we are open next week, Wednesday through Friday, and then we'll be open regular hours after the new year. You can also go on fairellfirm.com and book online if you would like to. Our consultations are $150, and they give you an hour with one of the attorneys in the office. And I don't see any more questions coming up, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up today. I hope you guys have a wonderful, blessed, happy, Merry Christmas this weekend, and be safe if you're traveling. We're not going to be live next week, but we'll catch you in the new year. Y'all be blessed.